Tonight, the biggest U.S. bust ever of a Mexican drug cartel. In a CBS News exclusive, we take you inside the operation.
2 kilos of cocaine right there.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, astonishing new numbers about the H1N1 flu. The CDC says fully 20% of American children have had symptoms of it this month. And parents are asking, where's the vaccine? A rash of suicides among teens at the same California high school. What drove them to take their lives? All in the same way. And the latest thing in dining out. Gourmet restaurants.
I think I want to have the 100% grass-fed beef.
Of course you do.
On wheels.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. The U.S. government has come down hard on Mexican drug traffickers operating right here in the United States with the biggest series of raids against them ever. Over 2 days, more than 300 arrests as more than 3,000 federal agents and police officers fanned out across 19 states. Last night, Mark Strassman took us exclusively inside the anti-drug operation in Atlanta, the city Mexican cartels are using as their distribution hub. And Mark, I understand you actually went along on some of these raids.
Yeah, we did, Katie. Raids on houses like the one behind me, often in unsuspecting neighborhoods where people had no idea they were living next to America's greatest organized crime threat.
They didn't knock. They didn't have to. From California's Central Valley to Atlanta's suburbs, they hit hard and fast before dawn. Part of the biggest DEA operation in history against a single Mexican drug cartel called La Familia. Raids that capped a 44-month investigation called Operation Coronado. Agents arrested nearly 1,200 people, including the 303 in the last 2 days. They seized 2,700 pounds of methamphetamine, just under 2,000 kilos of cocaine, and $33 million in cash.
The toxic reach of its operations extends to nearly every state within our own country.
CBS News exclusively followed agents on a series of raids. In this Atlanta house, they found kilos of cocaine hidden in a box spring. Behind the bathroom's walls, more kilos of cocaine. And these plastic tubs.
That's methamphetamine.
3 pounds of crystal meth, which La Familia exports more of to the U.S. than any other drug cartel. DEA agent Steve Whipple led this raid in Atlanta.
They make money, they send it back to families in Mexico, buy more dope. It's what they do.
Do it in suburban neighborhoods like this one outside Atlanta. Drug cartels hiding in plain sight in so-called stash houses.
This is a drug stash. There's other stash houses they use for money. There's other ones that we have seen that they use to bring people in, kidnapping houses.
Smith & Wesson 9mm.
In this house alone, agents hauled away 8 kilos of coke and 5 pounds of meth. Street value, more than $1 million. Atlanta's biggest surprise was also the most dangerous. This suburban home was actually a massive methamphetamine conversion lab. Mixing chemicals inside were so volatile, at first everyone kept back a block. The house could blow sky high. Agents in protective suits carefully removed buckets of explosive meth oil and acetone. So much meth in so many stages, even agents were startled.
Right now, every large city, every mid-sized city, every small city, and you say, well, who are the wholesale suppliers of meth, cocaine, marijuana, and heroin? It's Mexican organized crime.
This is the house where you saw agents pull out all that meth, 174 pounds of it in all. Its street value, more than $7 million. And neighbors had no idea. Katie?
Extraordinary access and footage tonight. Mark Strassman, thanks very much. Meanwhile, in Washington, the fallout continues from last year's financial meltdown. The Treasury went ahead today with plans to order 7 major corporations that haven't paid back their bailout money yet to cut the compensation of their top executives. And then the Federal Reserve got involved. Chip Reid tells us it announced plans to limit pay at thousands of banks all across the country.
For the first time ever, the Federal Reserve plans to give itself the power to regulate compensation at the nation's banks. The goal? Put an end to pay packages that encourage the kinds of reckless gambles that contributed to the financial meltdown. In a statement, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke said the Fed is working to ensure that compensation packages appropriately tie rewards to longer-term performance and do not create undue risk. The proposed rules would apply not just to top executives, but to any employee who could expose a bank to big risk, including some traders and loan officers. The plan divides banks into two categories. The nation's 28 largest would have to present their compensation plans for review. If the Fed finds a plan encourages too much risk, it could order changes. The nation's nearly 6,000 smaller banks would not have to submit their pay plans, but the Fed would conduct regular reviews. It's a dramatic change from the government's hands-off approach to bankers' salaries. Supporters say the Wall Street meltdown made clear there's no choice.
The banks must be regulated because if bankers pay themselves too much and the institutions fail, we have to bail them out or the economy fails.
Even some in the banking industry support the plan, grateful it doesn't go as far as they had feared.
The Federal Reserve does not propose setting pay caps for particular employees. We think that's the right approach.
But the government's so-called pay czar today said pay caps are necessary for top executives at the 7 companies that received the biggest federal bailouts. Ken Feinberg detailed his plan to cut cash salaries by 90% and to require most pay to be in long-term stock. He says that will force the 7 companies to focus on long-term health.
The importance of that bottom line is that there will be funds available in a profitable company to repay the United States taxpayer.
Now, the Fed proposal to regulate salaries at thousands of banks won't go into effect for at least another 30 days, but the Fed wants banks to be on notice. This is not just a proposal, it's a done deal. Katie?
Chip Reid at the White House tonight. And on its way to the White House for the president's signature is a bill the Senate passed today. It expands federal hate crime laws to include crimes against gays and lesbians. Democrats ensured passage by attaching it to a defense spending bill, which, by the way, includes a military pay raise of 3.4%. Now turning to the H1N1 flu and the impact it's having on children. Already 86 have died. And today a new CDC survey says about 1 in 5 American children had flu-like symptoms this month, and a lot of those cases turned out to be H1N1. We have 2 reports tonight from national correspondents Jim Axelrod and Jeff Glor. First, Jim, with a matter that has a lot of parents concerned, shortages of the vaccine.
Outside Washington, D.C. this week, 1,700 people waited up to 11 hours overnight for a clinic to open. The clinic ran out of its supply of H1N1 vaccine in 90 minutes. The government promised 40 million doses of the H1N1 vaccine would be ready by now. Instead, just 13 million are available.
Production is slow and the distribution is slow, and the distribution is uneven, so it's not getting out into the field in a regular manner.
Slow and antiquated. The production process for flu vaccines is half a century old. It starts with the CDC isolating the virus, which was done with H1N1 in May. This seed virus was then sent to the drug companies, where it's injected into chicken eggs. The egg's nutrients provide the fuel for it to multiply. The virus is then extracted, purified, and turned into vaccines.
Usually it takes 9 months to develop a flu vaccine. We're trying to accelerate it to 5 to 6 months.
New production methods have been developed that don't rely on this old-fashioned way, but they won't be approved until next year at the earliest.
Well, there's resistance to change, especially in the pharmaceutical business.
If the vaccines are making the drug companies targets for criticism, they're also making them a lot of money. Novartis, one of 5 companies making H1N1 vaccine, expects to make somewhere near $1 billion from sales.
It's like anything that you want done last minute or rush, right? You end up paying for that at I wouldn't necessarily say a premium, but a fair market value.
The government now hopes to have 50 million doses available a month from now and 150 million by December. That would cover the expected demand. The question is, in this race of virus versus vaccine, will December be soon enough? Jim Axelrod, CBS News, New York.
Look at the throw! Touchdown!
This is Jeff Glor. The NFL's last place Cleveland Browns found another opponent they can't beat, H1N1.
12 players are homesick with flu-like symptoms, so the team had to scale back practice sessions.
All I can do is do all the preventative steps, you know, washing my hands and all that stuff that goes along with going to kindergarten class.
Employee Flu Hotline, Danielle speaking. How can I help you?
Nearby, the Cleveland Clinic has almost 350 workers out. They've set up a special phone triage hotline where a nurse helps employees determine if they have the flu.
It's critical to assure employees we want them to get better, stay home, and then return to work when they're well. And it also provides us a way to track them.
In Boston, the Port Authority is training extra workers to operate snowplows, following concern regular drivers will get sick. And in Malibu, this restaurant's giving its employees vitamins and wiping down every doorknob every 2 hours. A bad flu season would do more than just make people sick. The economy would be too. Worst-case estimates have a full H1N1 pandemic costing the nation over $600 billion, knocking up to 4% off our gross domestic product.
You don't have anybody to replace them. You say,
Karen Mills heads the Small Business Administration. She knows many large corporations have contingency plans, but a recent survey shows that 68% of small businesses do not. What are the biggest challenges?
The biggest challenge for a small business is going to be to find the time to sit down and prepare.
And here is why that is so important. More than half the people who work in this country either own or work for a small business. They're the ones expected to lead this nation's economic recovery. Katie?
Jeff Glor. Jeff, thanks so much. And coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, the search for answers after 4 teens in the same town commit suicide in the same way. Something very troubling is happening in Northern California. Over the past 6 months in the city of Palo Alto, 4 teenagers have taken their lives, all throwing themselves in front of commuter trains. And John Blackstone tells us all were current or future students at Gunn High School.
Too often this year, the Silicon Valley commuter train that roars through affluent Palo Alto has become a terrible solution for troubled teenagers. The suicide on the tracks this week of a 16-year-old is the 4th in the past 6 months. All were enrolled in the same school, Palo Alto's top-rated Gunn High. Last night, some 400 anxious parents gathered at a community meeting.
It's more than a coincidence now, you know, and I almost wonder if it's starting to become this sort of some sort of like a siren call to kids who are in this area who are not feeling well.
But the search for ways to stop it has been going on since the first suicide in May.
It is a cruel irony that despite all these efforts and our increasingly strong community outreach on this topic, that we haven't yet found a solution.
Many worry that each suicide is planting seeds for the next.
Some of the students are saying it's more of a trend thing because you could totally see kids are getting a lot of attention from this.
The Centers for Disease Control estimates that as many as 5% of teenage suicides occur in clusters. The Palo Alto deaths all happen near the same rail crossing.
With everybody jumping in front of the train, with all of the suiciders doing that, I think that does suggest that there is that phenomenon at work.
The news media generally don't report suicides, but when the string of tragedies in Palo Alto sparked local news coverage, there was criticism that the reporting could bring more copycat deaths.
By showing videos of the passing train, the loud train steaming down its corridor, we make that more accessible in the minds of someone else who's feeling troubled or feeling depressed.
Local media even got letters from the Annenberg Public Policy Center.
We're not saying to censor the news, but we're asking the news media to think a little harder about what they report, because by reporting it, they could be perpetuating the story.
A community is wondering whether more information will bring difficult issues out of the shadows or just bring more tragedy. John Blackstone, CBS News, San Francisco.
If you know a teenager in trouble, there are ways to help. We put links to some resources on our website at cbsnews.com. In other news tonight, when you're flying, one thing you count on is that when you reach your destination, the pilot will land the plane, But that's not what happened on a Northwest Airlines flight from San Diego last evening. It overshot its destination, the Minneapolis airport, by 150 miles before the crew realized it and turned back. The plane and its 147 passengers landed safely. According to the FAA, the crew said they had been in a heated discussion about airline policy and lost track of where they were. The NTSB is investigating whether fatigue played a role. Coming up next, how angry are voters about the state of the economy? We'll take you to the state of New Jersey, where it's a key issue in a red-hot election. There are 12 days until Election Day, and while there are no national contests, one state race is getting national attention because it could serve as a test of how the Democrats are doing. It's the race for governor of New Jersey. President Obama has campaigned for incumbent Democrat Jon Corzine, who's spent $21 million so far. Republican challenger Chris Christie has spent $10 million, and independent Chris Daggett less than $1 million. Our senior political correspondent Jeff Greenfield has more.
If you're looking to measure the political fallout from America's hard times, New Jersey looks like the perfect place. 170,000 lost jobs, an $8.4 billion budget gap, along with a sometimes detached management style, have all made Governor Jon Corzine highly vulnerable.
I think every public official takes on some water when you take on tough issues.
Republican Chris Christie, a former U.S. attorney, has assailed Corzine's record in an effort to capitalize on voters' unhappiness.
The first question people ask is, do I want 4 more years? And that's a resounding no.
But now Corzine has pulled even in the polls. One major reason, he's once again put the fortune he amassed as chairman and CEO of Goldman Sachs into his political campaigning. This time, already spending nearly $17 million on mostly negative commercials.
One set of rules for himself, another for everyone else.
Apart from the green of his wealth, Governor Corzine's most powerful political asset is colored blue, Democratic blue. There are 700,000 more Democrats than Republicans in New Jersey, and the governor is reeling out his biggest guns, including the Democrat-in-chief, to say to voters, it's my party and it's your party.
Are you fired up? Are you ready to go?
This race is about me and Jon Corzine, and I think the public will ultimately decide it on that basis.
In the campaign's final weeks, an X factor has arisen. Independent candidate Chris Daggett, a former environmental official whose strong debate performance earlier this month and an endorsement from the state's largest newspaper has him at 20% in a new poll.
The major point here is continuing to get this message out and getting people to basically suspend the idea that there's a concept of a wasted vote. And if they do that, I win this election.
In 4 statewide races this decade, polls have shown Republicans in competitive battles. But on each election day, Democrats won comfortably. Should that pattern be broken this time, a Corzine loss will send chills up Democratic spines across the country. Jeff Greenfield, CBS News, Hackensack, New Jersey.
And coming up next, dining a la carte. And finally tonight, where is your favorite restaurant in Los Angeles? That could be a tough question to answer because, as Bill Whitaker is about to show you, it could be anywhere.
In a city always hungry for the latest sensation, LA is all a Twitter about food trucks, a movable feast of every kind of food imaginable or unimaginable.
And give me about 20 seconds on your quesadilla.
That's a Korean kimchi quesadilla.
Best street food in Los Angeles going right now, folks.
Lines of the hip and hungry forming all over town.
I think I want to have the 100% grass-fed beef dog.
Of course you do.
Zeroing in on the latest location of their favorite truck by constant Twitter chatter. Truckers tweet their every move, fans pick it up and pass it on, reaching thousands.
You just follow them and go on it, and they'll tell you where they're at.
There's a street food explosion underway, with more than 24 gourmet trucks plying city streets. And this truck lit the match. Kogi, a fanciful fusion of Korean and Mexican fare that has more than 44,000 followers on Twitter.
We just happened at the right time with the right people, and LA's just been wonderful to us.
Want Japanese fusion? Gourmet Mexican. Architecturally themed ice cream.
I'm going to be so overweight when I get finished with this story.
Yeah. Just tap Twitter and hit the streets. You might find wine tasting inside, organic hot dogs curbside.
And really, what wine doesn't go with hot dog, right?
They're super delicious. You know a trend is really trendy.
Oh my God.
When it goes viral.
Oh my God.
Dan Delaney is eating his way across country one truck at a time for his webcast.
It's a guilt-free way to have a little bit of luxury in your life when you maybe don't want to be spending so much money.
An average truck meal, about $5. With many restaurants boarding up these days, it's a real treat to see these trucks driving up.
Enjoy, you're welcome.
Susan Feniger made her name taking street food upscale in her restaurants. Now she's putting it back out on the streets.
Having just opened this restaurant and this taco truck, this is a lot less expensive than that restaurant.
There you go.
There's a whole new meaning to eating out. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And I hope Bill brought his Rolaids with him for that story. And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. I'll be back tomorrow. Till then, thanks for watching. Good night.